Hi there, welcome to this video where I'm going to be photographing birds in the snow. Now, as you can see behind me, we've had quite a heavy fall of snow overnight, so I wasn't actually planning on getting out into the hide this morning taking photographs, but I couldn't resist in these conditions. So this morning I've spent some time in the hide photographing birds. So what I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to talk you through all the photographs that I've taken. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the feed that I use, but mainly in these great conditions, I'm going to tell you about why I really enjoy my photography. I have spent quite a bit of time in the hide already this morning, and I didn't take my vlogging camera in with me because obviously it will disturb the birds, but because it was snowing very heavily when I got into the hide, the perches were very busy this morning with lots of birds visiting, because obviously they would find it very difficult to find food anywhere else, so they were really grateful of all the food that I'd put out on my feeders. This is really an impromptu part 3 of my bird hide series. People have been leaving me lovely comments saying how much they enjoy my videos from inside my bird hide here in my garden, and so I couldn't resist getting out this morning with this amazing weather. Now, when I got in the hide, it was snowing very heavily, so you'll see that in a few minutes when I start talking about all of the photographs that I took. But before I tell you about that, I will just mention the feed that I put out, because in this series so far I've not really mentioned much about the feeding process, and it's important, especially on days like this when there is little food available for the birds, that they've got somewhere where they can go. Now, there are lots of different options, and I don't use all of the options that you can put out for birds by any means. This is just what I use at the moment. I've got a feeding table, and on here I put a mixed seed, so there's bits of everything in there. There's corn, there's sunflower hearts, and lots of other different things, so I just buy it in a great big bag from the local pet store. Then here behind me I've got 2 hanging feeders. The first one is full of sunflower hearts. Now, they tend to be the most popular, and I buy them online, and there is a little bit of a half bucket placed on the top, and that just keeps them dry when it's really bad weather. And then next to it I've got a Niger seed feeder, and underneath you can see there is a garden trough. It's just a saucer really that goes underneath planters to stop the water draining out, but I find just hanging it underneath catches any seed that falls out, and it saves the build-up on the floor, because what I did find before I used that is I got a lot of waste Niger seed on the floor underneath that just went rotten, and that saves that happening. Once it fills up or gets a little bit in, I can remove it and put it somewhere where it won't build up on the floor underneath. You will have seen this in one of my other recent videos. In this tree here, I push suet pellets to attract woodpeckers, and blue tits seem to like them a great deal. But this is just suet in the form of little pellets that I can push into these holes, and then it just gets the birds to come and land on the side of this tree trunk. There are a whole host of other types of feeders and feed that you can put out for birds. Ground feeders are very popular with a lot of birds. I haven't got a ground feeder at the moment because I found that it was attracting rats, but I used to put the mixed seed that I put on the table down on the ground feeder as well, and different birds preferred feeding off the ground. You can also put out peanuts. A little word of advice: if you do put out peanuts and they are whole, make sure they're in a mesh that is not big enough to allow the whole peanut to come out, because birds can choke on it. You can buy peanuts that are crushed up, so that is an alternative. Then there are also lots of other different kind of feed that I haven't got time to go into in this video, but if you visit your local pet store or feed specialist, then you'll find lots of different feeds. Just do a little bit of research to find out what kind of birds you want to attract. One very prevalent visitor that I've seen this morning is the blue tit. It's a really pretty little bird with blue and white plumage, and it particularly likes the tree that I put out for the woodpecker. It goes after the suet from the side of that tree trunk, and it just is so attractive. I just really enjoy seeing it. The blue tit's natural diet is insects and spiders, but it does also like seeds and fat-based products, which is why the suet pellets are so attractive to it. And it's also known for its acrobatic skills, and I've caught it this morning hanging upside down, taking the suet pellets out of that tree trunk. One of the bravest birds that I've got at the moment is the blackbird. So much in fact that while I'm putting the food out in the morning, I've usually got one or two of them by my feet or in the branches by the side of me, waiting to get first dibs on the food. That's just how brave they are. They don't mind being so close to me in the morning. They obviously feel very safe, and I've got no problem being so close to me. The male's quite noticeable with its yellow beak and black feathers. The female is a little bit less distinct with more brown feathers, and it actually makes it look a lot more like a thrush, and it's easily disguised if you're not actually used to what a thrush looks like. But I did get a visit from a thrush this morning, which is quite unusual because that's very much more distinct. But it's got a speckled chest with almost arrow-like fletchings on its front, which is very distinct, so you can't really mistake it for a female blackbird. I've had lots of visits this morning from the UK's favourite bird, which is of course the robin. I've got one of my subscribers that regularly says how much they like seeing robins in my video, and particularly seeing the robins in the snow. That seems to be their natural environment because you quite often see robins on Christmas cards, and that just makes them seem even more seasonal. One of the reasons why robins are associated with Christmas leads back to the Victorian times, when Victorian postmen used to wear red jackets, and they got the nickname robins or redbreasts. And then people started making Christmas cards, drawing postmen originally, and then they started changing them to becoming robins on the postcards, and that kind of stuck from then on. Another very common visitor I've had that has visited this morning is the great tit. Very distinct in its plumage because it's black and white with quite distinct streaks of yellow on it as well. It's about similar in size to a robin, but obviously very different in the way that it looks. One interesting thing that I found out about a great tit is that as well as it liking most kinds of food, it also over the winter will feed on small hibernating bats. Close to where I live there's a large area of woodland, and this is quite heavily populated by pheasants, and some of them do stray out of that woodland into our garden, and we've had a couple of them here today in the snow trying to pick up food from underneath the bird table. So that makes for quite a striking photo and a little bit of video as it struts around in the snow. One common but very shy little bird that I've seen this morning is the chaffinch. It does tend to stay away from bird feeders, but I do sometimes see it on the bird table. More often than not though, I see it hopping about underneath the hedgerow or the trees that are just behind the bird feeders. Now the male is quite distinct with a pinkish kind of plumage, and the female is slightly drabber with a more browny yellowy coloured plumage. Another shy little bird that tends to prefer feeding off the ground is the dunnock. I do really like seeing the dunnock. It's quite plain in its coloration, brown mainly, but with a slightly greyer head. But I think it's a really cute bird, and I've seen it picking up little bits of food from underneath where the food has dropped on the floor this morning. One bird that is slightly more difficult to photograph is the wood pigeon, because they are more skittish and the slightest bit of movement from the camera will set them off. And I think because this morning there's less food about, they were a little bit braver to come onto the perches in front of the hide, and I was lucky that I was actually pointing in that direction. So I did manage to get a photograph of one, but it did look to be a little bit more bedraggled because it was obviously wet from all of the snow, and so I've got a photograph of that, but it's probably not in its best condition. One bird that I did see this morning that I usually see more commonly in the spring is the greenfinch. Now, I only got one piece of video of it, but because I'm filming this morning all of my video in slow motion, it means that I've got a lot longer period that I can use, and so a very short amount of real time that I see the bird on the perches basically quadruples when I'm filming in slow motion. So I might have quite a bit of video of most of the birds, but I've chosen to film in slow motion this morning because I think when it was snowing earlier on, it just makes the snow falling in slow motion seem even more atmospheric and really magical. As the morning progressed, more birds had landed on the branches and knocked the snow off, so they weren't quite as attractive. Also, the sun had started to come out, so it had started to thaw, and so I decided to call it a day. But what I'll do is I'll leave you with some of my favourite shots that I took this morning. What an exhilarating morning of photography I've had today. As you can see, the sun started to come out now, and we've got a little bit of a thaw happening. So we've definitely had the best of the photography this morning, but I've really enjoyed myself, and I've got some really nice pictures of birds in the snow this morning. Well, if you have enjoyed that video, do let me know down below in the comments, and nip over to my Instagram or Vero account, that's at Darrell Oakden Photography. Leave me a comment there, and you can also see lots of my photographs. Now, if you like what I do on the channel and want to help support me to make future content like this, then you can leave the gift shop. That's at Teespring. There I've got a range of merchandise on offer, so head off over there because the purchase really does help me out and it's very much appreciated. Don't forget that I've got some memberships on offer, so click on the join button down below and that'll lead you to a video that'll tell you all about the perks that are available. But you don't have to spend any money at all to support the channel. You can do that simply by clicking the like, subscribe and the bell notifications. It really helps me out and it makes sure that you don't miss out on any future content. Watch out for next week's video. That goes live on Sunday. In the meantime, you can go and check out this video just up here. But all that's left now is to say, stay safe, and I'll see you soon.